All right, joining me now, Congresswoman Barbara Lee, Democrat from California. She knows a thing or two about remaining skeptical about military intervention. As you see this new report from Der Spiegel and my exchange with Judy Miller just there about what's going on in Iraq, what lessons do you draw that are informing the way you are thinking about conducting your role in Congress as we think about possible authorization of use of military force for the ongoing campaign against ISIS in Iraq, possible intervention in other places, et cetera?
I think what's important is, first, we always need to recognize that a military solution is not the only option and give equal weight to other options and alternatives at that time. But going back to your
Let me stop you there for 1 second. Does Washington do that? Like, is the conversation on Capitol Hill any more or any less dominated by military solutions now than it was 12 years ago?
I think we're building that type of critical mass on Capitol Hill. When you look at members of Congress in the Progressive Caucus, the Tri-Caucus, the Black Caucus, the Democratic Caucus, I'd say, and when you look at the vote as it relates to the resolution authorizing the use of force against Iraq, you will see, believe it was 132 or 133 members of Congress, mostly Democrats, who voted against that authorization. But I think what's important as it relates to Iraq and the weapons of mass destruction and the presentation of the, quote, intelligence data, if you remember correctly, the UN was conducting an inspections process. And during that period, I was on the Foreign Affairs Committee when the Bush administration decided to use force and go to war. Offered an amendment, which of course the committee did not pass, but I took it to what we call the Rules Committee, got a rule, brought it to the floor. What that resolution said was, look, let the inspections process continue.
And they were coming back and saying we're not finding anything.
Yeah, let's determine if they're weapons of mass destruction. I got that amendment to the floor. Guess what? I got 72 votes for it. We need 218 just to get it passed. And so I share that because we have to remember the history that there were alternatives. We could have waited to determine whether or not the intelligence was accurate and factual.
So let me ask you this. You're in a Congress right now that said, oh, we need the president, we need an authorization to use of military force. And basically, as far as I can tell, no one's really doing much about it. But as soon as the president strikes his preliminary deal with Iran, Congress is rushing to have a vote to say whether up or down. What do you make of that?
Well, I believe, first of all, as it relates to the president, I just have to say I think he's doing a phenomenal job in trying to make sure that there are no nuclear weapons in Iran and that he addresses that in the deal. And, in fact, we have not authorized the use of force in terms of Iraq once again and what's taking place in the Middle East as it relates to ISIS and Iraq and the whole 9 yards. And we need to do that. We need to debate and we need to decide whether or not we're going to authorize that war, which began last August. Okay?
Yes.
Secondly, that's the contradiction and the hypocrisy oftentimes in the Congress. There's no way that Congress should undermine what is, I think, a diplomatic path that could lead to a non-nuclear Iran.
And it also strikes me, if you want to say, you should want to say on peace and war, not just one, which is not apparently the way it's working in Congress now. Congresswoman Barbara Lee, thank you very much for joining us. Great to have you in New York.